Yep. Okay, we're live now, so can we start with the election of the chairman, please?
We need nominations for the chair, please.
Have you?
Just start, yeah.
Yes, I'd like to propose Councillor Bolton as chair for this meeting.
Second. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the licensing subcommittee panel of and the item number 1 on the agenda is appointment of chair. If we can move on to introductions, I'm Rosemary Bolton, councillor for Hertford Kingsmead. My colleagues.
Councillor Jones, member for Buntingford and a member of the licensing committee.
And I'm Councillor Carolyn Redfern, Hertford Seal.
Thank you. And if the officers could introduce themselves, please.
Morning, my name's Dimple Rootchand. I'm legal advisor to the committee.
I'm Brad Wheeler, I'm the Senior Licensing and Enforcement Officer.
Peter Mannings, Democratic Services.
And if you could, the applicant could introduce himself, please.
Good morning, my name is Ewan McGregor, TLT, and I represent WH Smith. You'll notice that I don't have anybody from my client company here this morning. I don't know if your officers have explained the position, but the store manager had hoped to attend but has had to go to the store, and the regional manager had hoped to attend but his wife has gone into labour, which I hope is as good an excuse as any for not.
It's not a bad excuse, actually, as I go. Yeah.
I apologise, and it will not detract, hopefully, from the application. I've been doing WH Smith work for about 4 years, and so I know the business inside out. And if there are questions, I will answer them. If they're not, and I'm hoping that there won't be, that I don't know the answers to, then I can take instructions on that. But I apologise for their absence, but hopefully the explanation is satisfactory.
Thank you very much. And the lady from making representations, please.
Hello, my name is Liz Downs.
Thank you very much. And we have no interested parties.
I am the interested party.
You are the interested parties, but no, look, no, thank you very much. Responsible authorities, yes. Chairman's apologies. We have no apologies. No apologies, thank you. Chairman's announcements. We're not expecting a fire test. If an alarm goes off, please run. Well, not run, but go swiftly. There are emergency exits over there, and the toilets are out there if anyone needs it. Item number 4, declarations of interest. Are there any members' declarations of interest? No, thank you. Item number 5, the minutes from the 19th of October. Would we have someone?
Yeah.
Right, Councillor Redfern and second, and those are approved. Thank you. Number 6, a summary of your procedure. Hopefully everyone has seen the summary of procedure. And on to number 7, the application for the new premises license. So you should be aware of what's going to happen. First, the officer will make his representations, and then we will go through the questions in the order that we will ask any questions, and then the applicant, we haven't got any responsible authorities, and then the interested party. Okay, so everyone will have their opportunity to speak. Okay, so if we could start with the licensing officer, Brad, please.
Thank you. Good morning to you all. Contained in the papers in front of you is the full report outlining the application for a new premise licence under the Licensing Act 2003, Section 17. This can be found within pages 17 and 63 of the agenda pack. As you've already seen the report and the accompanying documents, I shall provide a brief summary of the application and the representation received. On the 2nd of March 2023, an application for a new premise licence was received from the applicant WH Smith Retail Holdings Limited in regards to a store situated at Bishop Stortford Railway Station, Station Road, Bishop Stortford. The application originally requested the following licensable activities. This was the supply of alcohol off the premises, Monday to Sunday between 0800 and 2100. The original application can be found in Appendix A, which is pages 33 to 53. Regarding the steps to promote the licence objectives, the applicant stated a number of steps, including no sales in open containers, use of CCTV, measures for safe evacuation in case of fire or emergency, use of a Challenge 25 policy, including notices, automatic till prompts, and a refusal log. During the 28-day consultation period, 3 representations were originally received from interested parties. The applicant subsequently amended their application to the following licensable activities. This is the supply of alcohol off the premises Monday to Friday between 0800 and 1900, Saturday between 0800 and 1800 hours, and Sunday between 0800 and 1600 hours. It should be noted that the table on paragraphs 3.9 should have actually read revised hours applied for. My apologies for that. The applicant also added 3 additional conditions. These were that no 1 litre bottles of beer, cider or wine to be sold, a contact telephone number or email will be provided to local residents, and that the premise licence holder will become part of any community safety initiatives coordinated by the police or local authority in as far as they relate to the 4 licensing objectives. As a result of the amendment, 2 of the 3 interested parties withdrew their representation. The only representation before you today is therefore representation 3 in Appendix C in pages 55 to 56. When considering the representation, it appears, although detailed, the license. When considering the representation, it appears, although detailed, the licence objectives of protecting children from harm and public safety have not been engaged. The points raised fall under the licence objectives of prevention of crime and disorder and public nuisance. I refer you specifically to points 3.21 and 3.31 of the report in regarding the interested parties' representation. There has been no representations from any responsible authority. The report looks at the statement of licensing policy, the revised guidance under section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003, and provides information submitted by the applicant and the interested party making the representation, and the subcommittee should determine the application in view of promoting the 4 licensing objectives. In determining the application, the subcommittee should consider if they believe that the applicant has provided evidence that the licence, if granted, would promote and not undermine the licensing objectives. This evidence should be balanced against the evidence given by those that have made the representation in that they believe that the licensing objective would be undermined. If members believe that the application would not undermine the licence objectives, then the application should be granted as requested. If members believe that there is evidence that the granting of the licence would not promote the licensing objectives, then it is within their remit to take any action that they believe is appropriate and proportionate to address their concerns. Members can attach conditions or take any steps, including limiting hours of licensable activities, or if there are no steps, then they may refuse the application in its entirety, but this should be the last resort. The subcommittee's determination should be evidence-based, justified as being appropriate for the promotion of the 4 licence objectives and proportionate to what is intended to be achieved. That concludes the report, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Brad. Have we got any questions from the panel, please?
Not for me at this stage, thank you.
Councillor Redfern? No, none from me either. Have we got any questions from the applicant? No, thank you. Mrs. Downs, have we got any questions from you?
With regards to what's just been said.
Yes, exactly. From that, no. Okay, thank you very much. Then, in that case, we will move on to the applicants. If you'd like to make representations, thank you.
Good morning. I have had a very brief opportunity of speaking to Mrs. Downs before the meeting started. I introduced myself and explained.
Can you talk into the microphone?
I'm so
please?
sorry. I had an opportunity of speaking to Mrs. Downs before you came in this morning. I had a very brief chat with her, introduced myself. I think it's only courteous. These may be familiar surroundings to us, maybe less so to Mrs. Downs. And she asked a couple of questions, one of which was, WH Smith have got a store in the High Street in Bishop Stortford. Why haven't you made an application there? The WH Smith business is split into 2. There's the High Street business, and then there's the travel business. And this application is made by their travel side of the business. And so that is why the application has been made at the station. And the way I propose to deal with it, firstly, can I thank your officers for what is, on any assessment, a very comprehensive report, and is very helpful to me, and hopefully very helpful to you as a committee, and it enables me to cut down an awful lot of what I was proposing to say. But I'm going to deal with it in this way. I'm going to tell you a little bit about WH Smith. They will be familiar name to you, but I just want to explain a little bit about the background to the application. The application itself, the representations, although I'm not going to say a huge amount about that, because I think those are very, very comprehensively dealt with in your report, and then deal with the position of the responsible authorities, who of course have not made representations to this application. Insofar as WH Smith travel business are concerned, they operate about 110 outlets at train stations across the country, travel, and there are more at airports and bus stations up and down the country. But so far as their train business is concerned, there are 110 outlets, and they started licensing, the process of licensing these back in 2012. And there are now in excess of 40 licensed units at train stations across the country. And those range from the largest travel hubs in the city, in London, all the main provincial train stations. And I think the nearest one to here, I was talking to the regional manager last night, is in Cambridge. And so they are, on any assessment, an experienced operator of these premises. This is not something new, and it is something that they have taken a very considered approach to. It is instructive to you as a committee that none of those licenses have ever been subject to any enforcement action, and none of those licenses have ever been reviewed. And that does not happen by accident. It happens because there is good support, not only from head office, but to the store, from an area manager, from a regional business manager, to a regional director, who then reports up to the main board. And the head office's support this is provided to the store is in relation to security, losses, buyers, marketing and HR. So there's a vast range of people that are supporting the stores across the country. And you will be familiar with WH Smith, as I say. I remember it fondly when I was little, and that's a long time ago, when just before the start of term, you would go to WH Smith and you'd buy your pens and your pencils and a protractor and those triangular things. I can't remember what they were called, set squares, I think. Their offer has developed over time, and they now provide a wider range of products. There are, of course, newspapers and there are magazines. There is a broader range of food, sandwiches, soft drinks, digital products, so electrical products, health and beauty products, which would include pharmaceuticals, and where there are licensed premises, a small range of alcohol. Given the range of products they're already selling, they are some of those products, of course, are already require age verification. So they're obviously cigarettes that they sell and certain pharmaceutical products. So they are experienced and they know, even where they're not licensed, they know the process in relation to age verification. And where they do sell alcohol, it is a small range. It is limited within the space of the store. Space within these stores is at a premium, and so it is a small area within the premises that will be set aside to alcohol. And the products that they sell are all household names. So they are branded products. They are not own label goods that you might see in Tesco or Sainsbury's or wherever it is that you go shopping. And the reason I mention that is that own brand products tend to be at a lower price point. And so these products are all at what we would call a premium price point because they are branded products. They smell a small range, I say, to a small number of customers, but it adds to the range of products that they provide within their premises. It is something that has worked very well in other locations, as I say, not an issue where they have sold alcohol, and it is something that they would like to introduce to their premises at Bishop Stortford. And they are on any assessment an experienced and competent operator of licensed premises, and indeed experienced and competent operator of retail premises. In advance of submitting the application, we engaged in pre-application consultation, as we do with all WH Smith applications. I think it's only courteous to you as an authority and also to the responsible authorities to gauge what their reaction might be to the application, whether there are any suggested variations, amendments to the hours, the days, the conditions. No comment was received back, or no adverse comment was received back from any of the responsible authorities in terms of the hours that we had applied for. And in fact, nobody asked for any additional conditions. None of the responsible authority asked for any additional conditions. And at that time, as your officer has set out, we applied for a license from 8 in the morning until 9 in the evening. That has obviously been compromised. But I suppose the only point I would make there is that those hours were already within your core hours for off sales. I think these are town centre. Within your policy, are defined as being within town centre. And the terminal hour for sales of alcohol for town centre premises, I think, is midnight. So they are already well within your policy guidelines. In the absence of any adverse comments, the application was submitted, and I'm not going to run through the operating schedule that we submitted with the application because your officers very clearly set out, and you'll see from the bundle of papers, I think it's at page 51 of your report, the conditions that have been received, the conditions that were offered. Following the submission of the application, apologies for repeating some of what Mr. Wheeler has said, 3 representations were received, and it is the WH Smith way that they look to engage with local residents. We don't simply treat them with contempt and rock up at the hearing and hope for the best, but an email was sent to all 3 parties who had made representations. A second email was sent, and that appears, I think, at page 62 of your report, and that is where the application was compromised, given the observations that had been made by the local residents. The hours, as has been set out by your officer, were reduced significantly. So the terminal hour, the start time is 8 o'clock every day of the week. The terminal hour on Monday to Friday is at 7, on Saturday it's 6, and on Sunday it's 4. And that is consistent with the current opening hours of the premises. And perhaps more significantly, 3 additional conditions were offered. I'm not going to read them out again, but they appear at paragraph 3.9, page 20 of your report. And as a consequence of those communications and engagement with the local residents, 2 of the local residents withdrew their objection, and the outstanding representation or representative, Mrs. Downs, appears before you today. Insofar as the comments and observations on the representations are concerned, your report is very comprehensive and deals with the concerns. I would, and I don't mean this in a pejorative way, but I would characterize them as perhaps fears that Mrs. Downs has if these premises were to operate as a licensed premise. But and the point is made in the report, and I'm only repeating what is in there, is that they are unsupported by any evidence. And I will just mention in passing the case. There is a case, just for the record, it's called Thwaites. Your legal officer will be familiar with this. And what the case in brief says, the case, amongst other things, says that the case recognises that responsible authorities are experts in their field and that weight should be attached to their representation. Or, and I would add to that, the fact that they have not made a representation to this application. And the position of the responsible authorities is more clearly set out in paragraph 9.12 of the national guidance, which was revised in December of last year. And just very briefly, it says that each responsible authority will be an expert in their field. And in some cases, it's likely that a particular responsible authority will be the authority's main source of advice in relation to a particular licensing objective. For example, the police have a key role in managing the nighttime economy and have a good working relationship with those operating in their local area. The police should usually therefore be the licensing authority's main source of advice in relation to the promotion of crime and disorder licensing objective. And of course, they not only haven't made a representation, but in fact have made no comment on the application as it's developed during the process. And so it follows. The police also, I think, have a role in relation to public nuisance, as indeed does your environmental health officer. But the long and short of it is that none of the responsible authorities have made representations to the application. And I'm not going to read out these sections, but I would refer you to paragraphs 3.32 of the report, 3.34 and 3.36. And that simply repeats that which I have said in relation to the responsible authority's position. When you look at licensing applications, it's all a question of proportionality. And again, if you look at page 26 of the report at paragraph 3.38, there is reference to proportionality there. And when you look at proportionality and the approach that you're taking to this application, you are perfectly entitled to look at the operator, WH Smith, their historic experience elsewhere across the country, the fact that they have had no enforcement issues in relation to any of their application, and the hours that they've applied for, the conditions that they have offered, and the type of products that they are selling in their premises. And whilst my clients are respectful of the residents' concerns, both of those who've withdrawn their representation and Mrs. Downs, and hopefully you get some confidence. I'm not just saying that, but you get some confidence from what I was saying by the fact that we have engaged, the moment we knew that representations had been made, that we engaged with the local community, and two of the residents have seen fit to withdraw their representation. But what I would say is that it's not unreasonable to assume that were Mrs. Downs's concerns going to be realised, or there was evidence to support her concerns, it's not unreasonable to assume that the police, possibly the British Transport Police, and Environmental Health, or other of the responsible authorities, would have made a representation to this application. And the fact that they have not is significant. And the one question, and it's a point that your officer has made already, and I make no apologies for repeating this, is one question: is this application by this applicant at these premises for these hours with these conditions likely to promote and not undermine the licensing objectives? And I would say that the sensible conclusion that you reach and all that you've heard from me is that the application is likely to promote the licensing objectives and not undermine them. If the concerns or fears that Mrs. Downs has raised are realised, there are of course opportunities and a process for a review of the licence. And I know that nobody wants to invite a review, but experience of WH Smith has suggested that when their licences are granted, they operate in compliance with the Licensing Act. they're not a burden on the enforcement authorities, and they've never been a burden on licensing committees by way of a review process. And so I would invite you to grant the application.
Thank you. Have we got questions from the panel, please?
I haven't actually, no, I can't think of anything.
Just a couple of questions for clarification. You mentioned that WH Smith Travel have got 40 other licensable premises. I wonder, you may be able to answer this or not. How do the hours proposed for this premises at Bishop Stortford compare to some of the others? Do the others run later, or?
They are much more restrictive for these premises than they are at, I'm not going to say all, but a significant majority. I've been doing their work since 2019, and in that time we've licensed a number of premises, and I did a review of their licenses a couple of days ago. And some premises are licensed from 6:30 in the morning or 5:30 in the morning, and are licensed through until midnight. But I can say with a fair degree of confidence that I'm not aware of licenses that are as restrictive as the hours that we have applied for here. But there are certainly a significant number of licenses where the hours are longer, and they also have some licenses that are 24-hour licenses, but those are in motorway service areas and in airports.
Yeah.
But these are unusual in that they are shorter rather than longer than the average of their premises across the country.
And Chairman, just another question. And the market for these premises is, one would assume, rail users. I'm assuming people coming home from work, buying a bottle of wine, pack of beer to take home with them. I assume that is the business model for it.
It is principally that. I mean, I think the footfall in certain stores the way that the stores interact with the local community will differ, but it is principally for those that are using the train station on their way home or coming back from a day out or wherever it is they may be going.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know you touched on it, but I wonder if we can have a clarification about where the alcohol is going to be sold from. Was it on shelves? You've mentioned a defined area, and that some will be behind the counter because the licensing hours you've applied for are shorter than the opening hours of the store.
The way that the hours that have been applied for now are consistent. The hours for the sale of alcohol are consistent with the current opening hours. I appreciate that when we engage with the local residents who'd made representations, is that one thing that we didn't do was say that the opening hours were going to be changed. But the way that the applications are now presented to you is that the hours that we have applied for are the hours when the store is open. So that's the first point. In relation to where the alcohol is displayed for sale, I suppose there are 2 points. Any bottles of spirits are displayed from behind the counter. At the present time, WH Smith, I think, don't sell bottles of spirits in all or many or any of their stores, but in the past they have done, and they were always displayed for sale behind the counter, so that it's not self-service. The only exception to that is spirit mixers. So you may have seen that you might see cans of gin and tonic or Pimm's, and those would be on the shop floor in the same way that beer, cider, lager is displayed in fridges. In relation to where in the store it will be displayed, their practice is not to have it right by the entrance of the store, but in common with all of their applications, and I think in common with the guidance, and just checking that Mr. Wheeler's all right, whether he needs a glass of water.
Right, can we have just a minute recess while we sort out drinks, please?
Thank you. My apologies.
Right, thank you very much for that. Okay, should we continue?
Yes, so I think the second half of the question is whereabouts in the store is the alcohol going to be displayed? I suppose a couple of points. The first is that when W. Smith make their applications, they look to license the whole store to give them the flexibility, and that's not uncommon for any off-sales premise. And it is consistent with, I think, the guidance. The alcohol is not displayed for sale in the immediate vicinity of the entrance to the premises. And so it tends to be a little bit further away from the store, from the store opening for obvious reasons. And that would be true of electrical products as well, actually, and any other high value. So they would have them away from the entrance from the store. The truth of the matter is that losses within their premises are low. These premises fall, and I'm not just making this up on the hoof. It's a question that I asked of my client when I spoke to him yesterday, is that there is nothing unusual about these premises insofar as losses are concerned. And their experience is that insofar as alcohol is concerned, it's not a product that is targeted as for theft. It tends to be smaller products that people can slip into their pockets or their bags. And that is perhaps maybe obvious. And then when you look at losses, it's cut in three ways. There's things that may not get delivered. So if you've ordered a certain number of products and some don't get delivered to the store, that's counted as a loss, even though it's never actually got onto the shop floor. And then, of course, as is the case with all retail outlets, is that sometimes things do go missing. But their experience across the country is that the levels of losses are low.
Okay, so
It
it could be stored anywhere. The alcohol could be on the shelves anywhere in the store except from near the entrance. Is that what the answer was? Right, thank you. Mrs. Downs, do you have any questions of the applicant, please?
Sorry, I do, but forgive me if I jump around because this is, as you know, not something I'm used to. But I'm not wholly sure where to start. I did believe that the correspondence I received said that all alcohol was going to be served from behind the cashiers and that only the mixers could be anywhere. So I think that tied into, well, I actually think that tied into, I can't really know where it is exactly, the fact that there was certain procedures put in place, as in ID and following certain protocol and something else. I mean-
You need to put this in a question. So you're asking about,
Oh, I need to put it in question. Okay,
Please.
so the alcohol was supposedly, I believe, to be sold behind the cashiers, and only the mixers could be anywhere else in the store, and that it was to be done like that, so it followed the protocol of ID, the training of the staff, the extra training of the staff to sell the alcohol, and there was another one which I can't remember, but it was all to do with safety and security for the selling of alcohol. So there is a question there, has that changed?
So the position so far as the display of alcohol is concerned, there's a condition that appears at page 60 of the report at number 11. And it says, save for spirit mixers, all spirits to be displayed behind checkout areas to which only members of staff have access. But there was never any intention that other alcohol would be displayed for sale from behind the counter. And that's not something that happens in any of the other WH Smith premises across the country. Insofar as age verification, which I think is the second part of Mrs. Downes's question, all staff receive age verification training. It's updated every 6 months. There is a Challenge 25 policy which is common across the country, and you will have seen it when you go to do your weekly shop and you buy some alcohol. Is that there's a block or a prompt on the till, whether you're going to a checkout and engaging with a member of staff, or you're at a self-service checkout, you can't complete that sale until a member of staff has authorized that you are over the age of 18. If you appear under to the member of staff to be under the age of 25, you will be asked to produce ID, not something that has happened to me for many years. If you are able to provide the ID, the sale will be approved and then it will be completed. If you're unable to provide that ID proof, then the sale will be rejected. And the same would be true with cigarettes, and it would also be true of certain pharmaceutical products, which I think are also age restricted. And I don't think that there are any other products within their store that are age restricted. But there is a prompt that comes up on the till when those products are scanned through. Sorry, and I was addressing my answer to the councillors, and I do apologise, Mrs. Downes.
That's all right. Just forgive me for one moment, but on page 60, it does say that all spirits will be displayed behind the checkout area to which a member's staff only have access. When you say spirits, are you talking about hard spirits? Does that not include wine and other alcohol? I mean, when you say spirits, does that mean all alcohol, specific alcohol?
So the condition says save for spirit mixers, and those are the gin and tonics or the Pimm's cans. When we're talking about spirits, that's whiskey, gin, vodka, but beers and wines would be offered for sale on the shop floor.
do you have any other questions?
do.
Oh, carry on, please. There's your opportunity, but they have to be questions. You'll get your opportunity afterwards to make your case.
My question really is about how you have mentioned the 10 years you have been selling alcohol and have never had a problem. My question is here, though, that would you know of the problem, seeming none of your stores are to sell alcohol to be consumed in store? So it is a travel branch of WH Smith, which means they are bought in motion, and therefore any trouble or issues caused by the purchase of alcohol from your stores would be elsewhere. In Bishop Stortford case, I would say around the station, the car parks, and on the trains and the forecourts and the platforms. So I'm not sure how you're only in that comment looking at your actual store premises.
So all of the WH Smith travel premises are off sales premises. So people will come to the stores and they will purchase their alcohol to be consumed away from the premises.
Mhm.
And people on their way home, who might be getting on a train to go to someone else's house, to take it to someone's house for whatever reason. So their experience elsewhere is directly relevant to what will happen in Bishop Stortford, because it's the same trading principle in the same way that if you or I were to go to a supermarket and go to purchase alcohol, that's to be consumed away from or off the premises. So it's exactly the same principle here as it would be elsewhere. And that is one of the reasons that we engaged with the responsible authorities in advance of the application, was to identify and flush out any issues that the responsible authorities may have had in relation to that specific point, and none were forthcoming when we engaged in that.
But my question was actually, how would you know? Because you could ask, say, the police, but how would the police who would come across a problem know the alcohol had come specifically from WH Smith, because it is obviously a transitory sale of alcohol where the problems would be moved outside and not necessarily in store?
That may well be a question that's better answered by the police, but if one wanted to know where the alcohol was purchased, you could ask the person who has purchased the alcohol. WH Smith operate in these environments across the country, as I've said, and their type and style of operation and the type of products they're selling and the price points that they are selling have not realised any issues elsewhere. Had the police or environmental health officer any concern that the granting of the license for these premises were going to realise issues of crime, disorder or antisocial behaviour, then they would have engaged with us, I would have hoped, and I'm sure they would have done, because that's the way that responsible authorities work, engaged with us in the process and asked for additional conditions or asked for a reduction in the hours. I think one of the conditions that we offered when we engaged in this, and there was a concern raised by one of the representatives, and it may have appeared in your letter, but it's that no 1 litre bottles of beer, cider, wine be sold, and the wording there being products that may appeal to street drinkers. That's just something that that may be a very broad statement, but it is a concern that has been expressed elsewhere, not with this application, and it's a condition that we have offered. So it's a product that may be attractive to those that are street drinkers, but not one that we sell, and one that we're happy to condition that we will not sell.
Has WH Smith actually done any research on problems outside that has been from sales from its own store? You're suggesting that the police should do this or someone else should do this, but have WH Smith themselves looked into the situation that could occur from their own selling?
Is this relevant, as the police
Oh.
have not made any representations?
My point is the fact that WH Smith seem to be relying on others to do the research for them, where WH Smith have done a lot of research themselves on the selling of alcohol, but not of any issues that have arisen from the sale because it is not on their premises.
We do think it's a very difficult question to answer, because there is no identified problem. I mean, if there were, the responsible authorities would be here to address it.
The point I'm trying to make is there is no identified point in WH Smith, but there are issues of street drinking on the streets that can't necessarily be related immediately or obviously back to WH Smith. And as the applicant asked, well, you would ask the person who was drinking, but people who would be drinking on the street are not going to say, well, I bought it in WH Smith. That's,
Can I make two very quick points on that? You're absolutely right, councillor, about the position of the police. But if it gives Mrs. Downs any confidence, we have a very close relationship with the station manager. And we also have a close relationship in our stores with the transport police. And we have also offered a condition that we would become part of any community safety initiatives coordinated by the police or the licensing authority, insofar as they relate to the licensing objectives. So if it did become an issue, we are fully engaged in this process with either you as a responsible authority in your role as a responsible authority, with the police, with the environmental health officer, with the British Transport Police, and with the station manager, because our relationships with all of those people are key. And one of the reasons that we engage in the pre-application consultation is to identify if there are any issues and if there are any more conditions or steps that we can take to promote the licensing objectives.
Thank you. Have you got any other questions, please?
not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Panel, have you got any more questions after that? No? No, okay. Thank you. In that case, we're going to move on to you, Mrs. Down, as an interested party, for you to make any representations you'd like to. Thank you.
Okay. So I think I've stated that I feel it's not necessarily the place to have alcohol, purely because children use that station 6 days a week and they have to pass it. And I don't think there's been consideration to the children of Bishop Stortford, other than the fact that they've put in protocols to perhaps not serve them. But I think we all know if children want alcohol, they will find it. They will get it one way or another. There will be a possible public nuisance, which is because of where it is. There is already problems, or has been, in car parks and multi-storey car parks in Bishop Stortford, and it's very difficult to monitor those. The car park is vast, it leads onto a river, so we have not only perhaps gatherings and damage, but we also have litter issues, which does come down to the public safety as well, which I feel is important, as they have just built an awful lot of properties around the area of the station, which has got narrow paths. And I believe that the path that takes you across the railway from South Millside has to lead you through those properties to get to the station. So there's plenty of areas available for people to gather and drink their alcohol that they've purchased. I also think that it seems that it's based on a case of, well, let's do it, and if there are any problems, we'll deal with that later. Where I feel children passing through there all the time, and having now heard just that there will be alcohol available throughout all of the store, wherever they decide they would like to put it, albeit not the most expensive, but certainly the cans, which are less expensive, are on the shop floor, which are available to children to buy, albeit having put those extra measures in place. It's not just a child who'll go in. There are other people who are older who buy and pass on to other children, which is not WH Smith's problem, but if it is, in the sense that they are prepared to sell the alcohol in a place which is surrounded by properties already that are selling alcohol. I think that is my points that I can remember at the moment.
Well, you've got your representation there in front of you if you want to check them before you finish. We don't.
Oh, I see.
Well, have you got that?
Excuse me. Yes, I had actually made some comments to the officer observations where it seemed protection from harm of children didn't carry a lot of weight, which I was rather disappointed at, because I think that, you know, children should be protected from all harm. And being by a station with alcohol, and alcohol is something that children do tend to want to buy, and if it's there, they will be more tempted to buy it than if it's not there. I'm afraid I don't know what he was relating to in the guidance, but perhaps that was something I've missed. I think a lot of what I've said, I've already probably.
And we've
mentioned.
already read everything that you've written.
Yeah.
We just,
Yeah.
we want you to feel that you've had enough chance, to opportunity to say what you want to say.
I think there was just a point I'd like to make, which was it's a shame that the hours were stated differently, because the shops only open those certain hours. So that actually wasn't an amendment at all anyway, unless they were literally looking to increase the hours, and then literally it would become an off license as opposed to a WH Smith. Perhaps that's what they may be leading to. And the other point was, I think it was also a little shame that it wasn't clearer that it says safer spirit mixers, which was a point made, which a mixer is non-alcoholic. So safer mixes, everything else, it seems alcoholic would have been behind the staff cash desks, but that appears not to be the way. So there is alcohol available on the shop floor that is unprotected in that sense, and available for, although it may not be by the doors, it's certainly still available. And I think not everyone puts it in their pocket. People who want to take things will take things and will be fully prepared to slip it in a bag, and off they go onto the station or home or wherever they may be. I think it's unfair to make an assumption that people would be just going to WH Smith to purchase a bottle of wine to take home, which was another comment that was made. I think that's rather a restricted comment, and I think was a little unfair to be made. I think it could have been, there is a wider obvious connotation to selling alcohol, and it's not necessarily just to be taken home to share with whoever at your home. Quite often they're bought to be taken elsewhere and drunk in public places. I think that one is not my comment.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Downs. Panel, have you got any questions, Mrs. Downs? Councillor Jones.
Yes, yeah, thank you, Mrs. Downs. I just wanted to get into context your representation here. So are you a station user? Are you talking as a station user or as a nearby resident?
I'm not a nearby resident, so I don't live in the immediate vicinity of the station. I live in Bishop Stortford. I'm a Bishop Stortford resident, and I do use the train. I also believe that as I paid my council tax, is it that relevant as to exactly where I live in Bishop Stortford?
I'm not saying it's relevant. I just wanted to put it into context.
Well,
I wasn't sure whether your
okay, well,
concerns were as a user,
I feel
rail
that
user.
I am a user and I am a resident, and I do have strong feelings that the police at the moment are stretched, and therefore adding, in my mind, the possibility of more on their plate when it's not necessary shouldn't be something that's considered, albeit they haven't commented, which is disappointing. I wonder if it's because they are so thin on the ground that they haven't time to perhaps comment on. such things.
Yeah. And just going on, you know, you mentioned a lot of potential issues with misuse of alcohol. I think that's what you're referring to. But we don't seem to have any evidence. We've got no evidence here as a panel to look at. It's a presumption that the sale of alcohol is going to lead to antisocial behaviour, etc.
But who would,
We've got no evidence. The police haven't got any evidence. Well, they haven't brought forward any evidence of any
That's true.
issues around the station there. I just wonder where you're getting this information from.
what, that there's been problems around the station?
Yeah.
Well, there's definitely been bike theft, so I mean, we know that's a problem.
Well, it's not necessarily related to the sale of alcohol in WH Smith.
But you don't know that. We don't know that because, as I said, people haven't done
the
any
theft of a
sort
bike?
of related to alcohol. I said there have been thefts of bikes. You're saying there hasn't been any, you're basically, what you're saying is there's been no research done on it.
I'm saying if there was a theft of a bike that reported to the police,
Hmm.
I don't see the police relating that to any issues with issuing an alcohol licence for WH Smiths.
No, the police haven't commented at all.
No,
So we can't really talk on their behalf.
that is what I'm saying. We haven't got any
Yeah.
evidence. So I'm asking you, what evidence do you have, if you like, of, you know, have you witnessed any issues that
I've
are
certainly
around,
seen people drinking and being drunk in Bishop Stortford.
but around the station then?
There has been around the station. And that's without them selling alcohol.
Mm. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Redfern, have you got any questions?
No, I think this is a very interesting conversation. I think Mrs. Downs has made some good points, but unfortunately, I don't think that they will stand up against the conditions that we have to follow when licensing places. I do stand
Right,
by.
okay.
Totally
Thank,
agree.
well, we're not making any decision yet.
Yes, no, I think you
Um,
made some good points. However,
Sorry?
thank you.
It's just questions at the moment, councillor.
If I could make a comment upon that, that the council has just said, that's because there isn't any research done for me to bring to this hearing to back up what I'm saying. I am a resident and it's what I've seen and my opinion that's being stated here. I don't have any figures or statistics to back up what I'm saying. Perhaps that would have been something I could have looked into if I realised how the session would be. I didn't realise that, and that's unfortunate for me.
Thank you. The only question, I mean, I've noted from the report of the other licensed premises and the very close proximity of this premise. And I was going to ask why you think granting the license would add to the issues, but I think you have covered that unless there's anything you want to add. No.
Other than the fact that it's literally at the door of the station.
Mhm.
So, and it sells other things that people would be willing to buy, like chocolate, and which would take you in there and then you see what you see and then you want what you see.
Okay, thank you. One point I was going to make was you've said about you think the police haven't looked at this, or you wonder whether they haven't looked at this because of their short of time. There are designated licensing officers who do look at all of the applications, and they do make representations. They just haven't on this occasion. They don't at every, but they do read them. So it's not a lack of police time for licensing. Okay, so do you have any questions for Mrs. Downs? Where are we on to now then? So we'll need to move to closing statements, and they will be in the order of you're allowed to make a closing statement first. At this point, there will be no more statements, no new evidence, no questions. It's just a simple closing statement, and then the applicant can make one as well. All right, if you'd like to make a closing statement, this is your opportunity.
Well, it'll be short and sweet. I think that WH Smith's application is really based on its profits. It's based on WH Smith and not the residents that live around the area, or the implications that may be for other residents who live in Bishop Stortford, which is a shame for Bishop Stortford.
Thank you. The applicant, do you wish to make a closing statement?
I'll be really brief, and I'm not going to repeat anything that I've said already. There was very wide consultation with this application during the statutory consultation process, and there was significant pre-application consultation with the responsible authorities in advance of the application. And where we are left with, and I mean, no disrespect to Mrs. Downs, is that there's one resident that is opposing this application. We have provided a comprehensive schedule of conditions. I've given you evidence of their previous trading in other locations, which is instructive to you as to what will happen here. There is no representation from any responsible authority, and you've got that point that I've made there. We do engage with the local community in those conditions, certainly in the post statutory consultation processes that we've engaged fully with the local residents. We've put a very much more restrained application before the committee with additional conditions. We've made a commitment to engage with local initiatives that there may be, if indeed there are any. We will provide a contact number to Mrs. Downs and indeed to those local residents who have withdrawn their representations if that's felt appropriate. We will continue to engage. You are presented with a responsible operator who has a very clean track record across the country over a period of years, and I would invite you to grant the application.
Thank you very much. Right, that closes this part. The subcommittee, we are now going to retire to another room to make our decision. I want to make it clear, it's only us three that make the decision, no one else in the room. We will be accompanied by legal, the lawyer, and by the Democratic Services as well, but they will take no part in our decision. Is it all right with everyone if the work experience young lady comes with us again? She'll be keeping in the corner out. She won't be getting involved in any decision. It'll be just us three making the decision. All right.
Fine.
And then we'll come in when we've made the decision. So it takes a while to write up the reasons. All right. So don't sit there and expect us to be back in 5 minutes, because we can't write that quickly. So if you want to, have a break, get some fresh air, have a drink. This is a good opportunity to do it. Okay, thank you. sorry, this will be sent out to you. Just going to read it out now. The licensing subcommittee have read the application for a new premises license for WH Smith, Bishop Stortford Railway Station, Station Road, Bishop Stortford, Hertfordshire, CM23 3BL, reference 23/0300/PL, and listen to the comments of the senior licensing and enforcement officer, the applicant, and the interested party. In determining this matter, the subcommittee have decided to grant the application for the sale of alcohol on and off the premises Monday. Was it only off the premises, wasn't it? It was only off the premises. Monday to Friday, 0800 to 1900, Saturday 0800 to 1800, and Sunday 0800 to 1600. Subject to the conditions offered up in the operating schedule and the further conditions offered up during the consultation period. In coming to its decision, the subcommittee is mindful to strike a healthy balance between the interests of the residents and supporting the local economy. Members were mindful of the concerns addressed by the interested party, however noted that these representations did not fully relate to the impact of the licensable activity which will be carried on from the premises. Members are satisfied that no responsible authorities have objected to the application. Members are mindful that the conditions offered within the operating schedule and the additional conditions offered up within the consultation period are appropriate to promote the licensing objectives and will address many of the representations received. This decision will be sent to you in writing, and there is the right of appeal within 21 days to the Magistrates' Court. And that's it. Thank you very much for your time, everyone.
Can I thank you for your time as well? The comment was made as to whether there was any news on the baby and the arrival of the baby. And I did say that given that my wife was in labour for 36 hours with our first child, I was hoping your decision was going to come before the baby arrived. So the baby has not yet arrived, but I'm grateful that you didn't take 36 hours to
We've
reach your decision.
Beaten the
Yeah.
baby, right?
And we will provide a contact number through the authority for those residents who have made representations in line with the condition that
Thank you
we've
very
offered.
much.
And thank you for your time.
Thank you. And thank you for attending. Thank you very much for your representations. Thank you. Bye. Right, the last item on the agenda was any other business, any urgent business, and we have none. So that is the end of the hearing. Thank you.